The Temple Before Civilization, Göbekli Tepe, a NEXION documentary. Opening intro. NEXION. This is NEXION, where we follow the traces history left behind and ask the questions history tried not to answer. Imagine a temple built more than 11,000 years ago, before pottery, before writing, before cities. Imagine carved pillars, so precise and massive, they changed the story of how human societies began. What would it mean if people worshipped long before they farmed? Tonight, we travel to southeastern Turkey, to a hill that buried its own mystery for thousands of years, a place called Göbekli Tepe. This is the temple before civilization. Chapter 1. The hill that hid a revolution. For centuries, the ridge that archaeologists now call Göbekli Tepe was a quiet, round mound above the rolling plains near modern Canali. To shepherds and farmers, it was simply a hill, a place to graze, a weathered outcrop. But in the 1960s, surveyors recorded something curious: stone fragments, worked pillars, scattered reliefs. The record lay in dusty archives for decades until one archaeologist, driven by a radical question, could monuments predate settled agriculture, returned, trowel in hand. His name was Klaus Schmidt. In 1994, Schmidt began systematic excavations that would rewrite the origin story of human society. Below the surface, he found enormous T-shaped stone pillars, arranged in purposeful circles, not the random piles of stones you'd expect from a nomadic band. These stones were worked, carved, and placed with intention. The hill had been hiding a structure far older and far more complex than anyone dared imagine. Chapter 2. The Stones Speak. The first thing you notice about Göbekli Tepe is scale. Many of the pillars stand 5 meters high. Some weigh as much as 20 metric tons. They are T-shaped with broad capitals and narrower bases, anthropomorphic, as if standing figures had been abstracted into stone. Carved into their faces are animals: foxes, boars, snakes, scorpions, wild birds, sometimes in fight, sometimes in repose. Some panels show abstract shapes, low reliefs of hands, or symbolic motifs we still struggle to translate. The artistry is precise. The iconography repeated across pillars suggests a shared symbolic language. But there's an enigma here. Around these monumental stones, archaeologists found no evidence of permanent dwellings. No houses, no long-term trash middens of daily life, no agricultural tools in abundance. How do we reconcile monumental construction, the coordination, labor, ritual, with a culture that, until then, we believed to be mobile and small? Chapter 3. Dating the impossible. The dates were the real shock. Radiocarbon tests placed Göbekli Tepe's main phase between roughly 9,600 and 8,200 BCE, several thousand years older than the first known farming villages in the Fertile Crescent. In other words, this ceremonial center appears before the systematic cultivation of wheat and barley became widespread. The usual assumption had been that agriculture gave rise to settled life, which then allowed labor specialization in monumental architecture. Göbekli Tepe turns that logic upside down. Archaeologists now propose another possibility, that ritual gathering and the social glue of religion may have preceded and perhaps even stimulated the move toward agriculture. Large seasonal gatherings could have incentivized the cultivation of specific plants to support feasting and ritual, creating a feedback loop where ritual needs led to agricultural experimentation rather than the other way around. Chapter 4. How was it built? Let's imagine a winter's morning 11,000 years ago. Hunters and gatherers descend from surrounding hills to a river valley. They bring obsidian for trade, flint tools, and perhaps animals for feasting. For them, Göbekli Tepe is a meeting place, a ceremonial stage. But the pillars are built of limestone, quarried from the surrounding plains, shaped with stone tools and polished with bone or flint. Erecting these stones required organized labor, teams to extract, shape, transport, and position. This means leadership, communication, and planning. Social structure is complex enough to orchestrate such feats. The precision of the carvings suggests skilled artisans. Patterns repeat across enclosures, indicating shared conventions or shared narratives. Whoever built Göbekli Tepe had systems of apprenticeship and cultural continuity. Chapter 5. The Enclosures. Circles of meaning. The architecture of Göbekli Tepe is built around circular enclosures. In the main area, concentric rings of pillars form spaces that are clearly communal, not domestic. The central stones of each ring are often the most elaborately carved, suggesting symbolic focal points. Some researchers interpret these as temples, places of ritual performance, ancestor veneration, or astronomical observance. Others caution that calling them temples imposes modern categories on ancient practices. But across cultures, large ritual sites play similar social roles. They coordinate seasonal cycles, unite disparate groups, and forge identities. What's unmistakable is that the site was a shared arena where people came together repeatedly. For a nomadic or semi-nomadic group to invest in this kind of centralized ritual infrastructure suggests that the social bonds it created were extraordinarily important. Chapter 6. The Buried Secret. Göbekli Tepe has another striking feature: deliberate burial. At some point, after centuries of use, the enclosures were systematically buried. Layers of soil, intentionally placed, covered the massive pillars, preserving them beneath a protective mound. Why would people bury a site that took generations to build? There are several theories. One proposes ritual closure. After a period of use, the site's power had to be contained. Another theory suggests environmental or social pressures, climate change, shifts in population, or the rise of new centers made old forms of ritual obsolete. Burial could have been an act of reverence, sealing the sacred past into the ground. What this deliberate inhumation achieved was also modern science's gain. The backfill preserved the carved stones in compelling detail, allowing archaeologists to read an ancient symbolic world unexpectedly intact. Chapter 7. Göbekli Tepe and the Origins of Religion. Perhaps the most profound question Göbekli Tepe forces us to ask is this: did religion come before the state? For much of the 20th century, the model was neat. Agriculture greater than surplus, greater than social stratification, greater than religion. State architecture. Göbekli Tepe complicates the model. It suggests a scenario where ritual practice and large-scale cooperation emerged among mobile groups, their shared ceremonial obligations providing the social scaffolding necessary for later institutional complexity. If religious gatherings created networks of trust and mutual obligation, they could have set the conditions for settled life. The need to supply food for gatherings could have encouraged plant cultivation. The networks forged at ritual sites could have allowed larger exchanges and the transfer of innovations. In this sense, Göbekli Tepe is not just a monument. It may be the spark that lit the story of civilization. Chapter 8. The Animal Imagery. Language without words. The carved animals at Göbekli Tepe are often vivid and dynamic. A boar's bristled back, a viper coiled in warning, birds in mid-flight. These images recur. But are they simple decorations? Or do they encode mythic narratives and belief systems? Some scholars read the iconography as narrative sequences, perhaps recounting origin stories, symbolic cosmologies, or seasonal cycles. Others suggest the animals could represent clans, totems, or spiritual beings with roles in social memory. An intriguing hypothesis ties animal motifs to ancestor veneration, the dead as partners in migration, hunt, and survival. The animal forms a bridge between living groups and the subterranean world. Whether these interpretations are right or not, the repetition of motifs shows a shared symbolic grammar, a cultural language that bound communities together. Chapter 9. Continental Echoes and Wider Connections. Göbekli Tepe did not exist in a vacuum. Around the same millennium, communities across the Near East were experimenting with different forms of social and economic organization. Recent finds at nearby sites like Karahan Tepe, Navali Kori, and KN show comparable monumentalism and ritual practice. These discoveries suggest that a broader cultural horizon existed in southeastern Anatolia and northern Mesopotamia, a fertile corridor where ideas, tools, and people circulated. This regional web likely amplified innovations. The exchange of obsidian, flint knapping styles, ritual practices, and perhaps even early domesticated plant knowledge helped transform scattered hunter-gatherer bands into interconnected networks capable of monumental construction. Chapter 10, Theories, Controversies, and the Fringe. No major discovery goes without debate. Göbekli Tepe attracted both sober, scholarly reinterpretation and speculative headlines. Some popular outlets suggested an unknown, advanced civilization built the site and vanished a narrative, tempting to an audience that craves mystery. Others have pushed pseudo-archaeological claims, invoking lost knowledge and cosmic instruction. As NEXION, we must weigh evidence cautiously. The mainstream consensus supports a gradualist explanation. Complex ritual practices emerged among hunter-gatherers, creating social structures that encouraged experimentation with cultivation and settlement. The site's craftsmanship, while sophisticated, can be explained by cumulative innovation among human groups, not sudden extraterrestrial insight. Controversies remain. The exact social organization behind the builders, the precise chronology of construction and abandonment, and the true function of the enclosures are all active research questions. But the most extraordinary outcome is simple. The past was more inventive and flexible than we once thought. Chapter 11, Göbekli Tepe and Climate, the End of an Era. Göbekli Tepe sits at a turning point in Earth's climatic history. The end of the last ice age brought changing temperatures, new plant communities, and shifting animal migration patterns. These environmental changes transformed the ways humans gathered, hunted, and eventually cultivated. In some climates, the abundance of wild cereals was a resource that encouraged more intensive harvesting. In others, scarcity demanded cooperation. The hypothesis that climate stress may have driven increased social gatherings and cooperation has traction. A shifting environment might have pushed groups to meet, share resources, and develop new forms of social organization. In this reading, Göbekli Tepe is part of humanity's adaptive toolkit, a way to build resilience through ritual and cooperation. Chapter 12, Preservation, Legacy, and Modern Debate. Today, Göbekli Tepe is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a destination for scholars and travelers alike. Its stonework requires careful preservation. Erosion, tourism pressure, and political instability in the region pose risks. Archaeologists now balance excavation with conservation. Some parts are reburied to protect their carvings. Others are stabilized under shelters. Beyond preservation, Göbekli Tepe's legacy is cultural. Its rewriting of chronology challenges public assumptions about primitive ancestors. For international audiences, especially in cities where complexity is assumed to be modern, Göbekli Tepe offers a humbling lesson. Innovation is ancient, and humans have been cooperating on massive projects far earlier than we imagined. Chapter 13, What Göbekli Tepe Teaches Us Today. If Göbekli Tepe is a mirror, what do we see? We see that cooperation can precede technology, that shared values, ritual, memory, meaning can drive monumental change. For modern societies grappling with trust deficits, fractured publics, and environmental change, Göbekli Tepe reminds us that the origins of civilization lie not only in tools and farms, but in people choosing to come together. We also see the danger of narratives. The modern temptation to reduce ancient people to caricatures of ignorance blinds us to their ingenuity. Göbekli Tepe invites humility and curiosity. Chapter 14, Closing Reflection and Call to Engage. Göbekli Tepe refuses to be neat. It is a stone testament to a time when people gathered to remember, to perform, and perhaps to build the future without fully understanding its shape. The pillars still stand, mute and monumental, asking us to listen. If Göbekli Tepe suggests anything, it's that human complexity is older than the city. It asks us to rethink cause and effect in our own rise. Perhaps religion and ritual were not the byproducts of settled life, but its architects. If this kind of investigation interests you, and if you want more documentaries that challenge what you thought you knew, subscribe to NEXION. We dig into the past so we can better understand the present. Hit the bell and leave a comment below. Which explanation of Göbekli Tepe do you find most convincing? The ritual center theory, the feasting hypothesis that drove agriculture, or something else entirely? Tell us why. The best comments will be featured in our next episode. This was The Temple Before Civilization, Göbekli Tepe, a NEXION documentary. Thank you for watching.